teach an animal like this a trick similar to that one?
Well, it depends. In fact, we have taught it a trick in about half an hour.
Really?
Yeah, with the greatest of ease.
But you've only had this one about a fortnight, haven't you?
She's already doing quite a big routine, as you can see.
Yeah.
And
is that just because she's an intelligent animal, or do they actually like to do tricks like this in the wild?
Well, first of all, she is a very intelligent animal. I think cleverer than a dolphin. She's picking tricks up far, far cleverer. We take perhaps 2 or 3 weeks to train a couple of tricks, and she picks it up in a day.
Is the fact that you've got a dolphin here and it's doing similar tricks helpful?
Yes, very. It's a two-way thing, actually. Sometimes the dolphin is a nuisance because she gets jealous and pushes her out the way and leads her into bad ways. Sometimes she shows her the beginning of a trick and then she copies it, like the twist like this. When we twisted her out, she said, "Oh, I'll nod." When we twist.
Was that something she was doing anyway, and then you sort of encouraged her to keep it on?
No, she copied it entirely from Squeak.
Really?
But the one with the kiss is different altogether. They like putting their tongues out. They've got this enormous tongue, you see.
Yeah, massive.
Comes right up. When she gave you a kiss, well, she loves that. And of course we encourage her and pet her.
Yeah.
And petting is probably as much to do with training as the actual feeding of the fish. In fact, most of the time we pet her, otherwise she gets full. And she likes being petted just as much as she likes the fish.
Now this one's only 3 months old, so it's surprisingly intelligent.
No, 3 years old.
3 years old?
Yeah, 3 months in, it should be suckling on that.
Oh, yes, that's right, of course. But it is very, very intelligent, isn't it?
Oh, I think so.
Is it more intelligent than the dolphin, do you think?
I'm sure, yes, much more intelligent.
So you wish you had it for a bit longer?
Well, we're lucky to have it at all. 4 months is a wonderful time to have an animal to train. And I think by the time, well, she's already doing a big show. She's carried the show while the dolphin isn't well. Yeah. And people absolutely think she's marvellous because she looks so good and she is so clever.
Well, what about this trick with the ball, Reg? How did you encourage her to start going for something which obviously wasn't natural to her?
Well, first of all, you have to get her to touch it, and then you feed her. And when she finds that she gets a piece of fish, she plays. Again, all training is play, the animal at play. You have to get to know her, you encourage her, you pet her.
Finally, the environmental group Greenpeace are fighting to free a killer whale. He's called Nemo, and he's on show daily at Clacton-on-Sea in Essex. Greenpeace say it's cruel to keep him in captivity, so they're trying to buy him, and they want to set him free.
Nemo was just 3 years old when he was plucked out of the waters off Iceland and put in a pool amongst the Big Dippers and amusement arcades of Clacton Pier. The environmental group Greenpeace have mounted a determined campaign to release Nemo to the wild again. They say the circus acts which the killer whale performs for the crowds on the pier are a cruel and ruthless form of exploitation. Greenpeace say that the lifespan of any whale is drastically reduced in captivity. In the wild, they're known to live complex social lives, but isolated in a pool, they can die literally through loneliness. But Nemo's trainer, a supporter of many of Greenpeace's environmental causes, says that on this issue, they're completely wrong-headed.
You can't force an animal this big to do anything at all. Absolutely nothing. If he doesn't want to work, he won't, period. How do you force an animal like this to do anything? You can't. It's done with affection, with time and patience.
The word is entertainment, and it's the sort of entertainment that's exploited quite ruthlessly by the owners of the whale and by the people that are showing them. What it's doing for the whale is unimaginable. You must remember it's a wild animal that's been taken from the seas and to be cooped up in the pool at Clacton and others like it for the rest of its life.
What's your view of this animal being moved?
Well, we think it's absolutely the wrong solution. The plan that's being carried out today is to take it to a pool that's already dangerously overcrowded with a whale and 7 other dolphins. The only solution for this whale is our plan, which is to release it to the sea. Now, we've been trying to buy this whale and release it for the last year, but the owners just won't deal with us.
This animal is totally dependent on humans, according to its trainer. Wouldn't it be really in a dangerous position if it was let loose into the sea?
No, not at all. It's been trained to perform a whole series of unnatural and stupid acts in this pool here, jumping through hoops, playing football and all the rest of it. It can easily be retrained to survive and fend for itself back in the sea. After all, that's where it came from and where it spent half of its life already.
It's been here 3 years, it's fed daily, it wouldn't even know how to feed itself, would it?
Well, that would be part of the retraining programme, and it's a very straightforward process to retrain an animal to catch live food and fend for itself. It's been done before with dolphins, it's never been done with a killer whale.
What effect would it have releasing Nemo into the sea?
Quite a disastrous effect, I'm sure. He's much too young, much too dependent on people to be just thrown back into a totally alien environment.
The pressure group Greenpeace wants to buy Nemo and put him back in the sea he came from. The Department of the Environment won't allow him to be moved until they're convinced it's in his best interests.
Now, Greenpeace talk of buying the animal and returning it to the wild. How much is it worth, and what do you think of the idea?
He's worth between £250,000 and £500,000 because his history records that's how much they've been sold for. The idea, in theory, may be lovely, but in practical terms, I don't think they've got the financial clout to buy the expertise in order to give the whale a fair chance.
The Greenpeace idea is certainly ambitious. Buy Nemo, load him on a plane, fly him to Iceland, reintroduce him to the wild in the hope of joining his old family. But is it in the whale's best interests? He could find enough to eat, but would he find his family? Would it be an improvement on life in captivity?
Well, in the wild, usually you'll find them in a small family unit, a male, a few females, adolescents, or alternatively, a group of solely made up of males. Occasionally they are found in singles, but it's not the normal thing.
But Greenpeace would like to buy him off you and put him back in the sea. What do you feel about that?
I think it's an irresponsible idea. They sell this idea to the public and the public believe it. They haven't thought it out truly, and they're not being strictly honest when they say they can do it.
Why are you apprehensive about what would happen if they did put him back in the sea?
Because basically I don't think it's fair to put a single animal that is very human orientated back in the ocean on his own. I think he'll follow boats. You know, he'll go to people. To put him back, I think it can be done. I think you need to put back 2 or 3 animals that have been literally taught to be at least wary of people, wary of boats, to give them any fair chance of readjusting.
Plenty of scientists agree with that judgment, others don't. Greenpeace collects money to buy Nemo and let him go free. Last June they raised £45,000 and offered the cheque to Nemo's owners. They bounced it straight back. Mark Glover represents Greenpeace and he thinks they're on the right track.
There are certain aspects, of course, which are questionable because it's never been actually done before. This sort of project's never been undertaken before. But what is certain is that this animal in its present state is doomed. It's not going to live very long under these conditions.
This one's been brainwashed, though. It'd be at a grave disadvantage if you put it back in the sea.
Well, again, there's no actual evidence for that. It's managed to learn a number of tricks, very simple tricks in this pool. There's no reason to suggest that it can't unlearn those and learn to survive back in its natural home. In fact, it spent more than half of its life in the wild, so it should be able to readapt very easily. And, of course, we would take all precautions to ensure that that was the case. We would make sure that it could catch live fish and fend for itself in the wild.
It's still pretty much of a gamble, isn't it? Don't you think, on the whole, it would be better for it to go to another sea zoo?
No, absolutely not. By travelling to another zoo, it faces a whole series of pools for the rest of its life, being transported from one to the other to make more money for its owners. At each stage, it faces a very stressful journey and a very severe risk of dying, in fact, during that transition. But what is certain is that it is going to die in captivity and within a fairly short period of time.
Well, Nemo obviously looks very happy here. How has Winnie reacted to having another whale in her pool?
Well, I think she likes it. Obviously another larger animal to play with. They have some fairly rumbunctious games. I mean, Winnie was quite happy with dolphins because they're just all animals together. Let's say just something else of similar size, obviously, is nice for her as well.
How much does Nemo eat a day?
He eats about 100 pounds of fish each and every day.
That is an awful lot. Is he going to grow much more?
Oh yes, he'll certainly grow. Being a male killer whale, he could grow to be about 25 feet long and over 6 tons in weight.
How long is he now?
He's about 15 feet long.
Does that mean that one day Nemo's going to outgrow his pool here then at Windsor?
Oh yes, he'll outgrow this pool, but we will be building a new pool for the pair of them.
The training obviously involves a lot of hard work and dedication on your part. How do you get a whale to do a backward somersault, for example?
In the wild, it will jump out of the water doing a thing called breaching. So the actual jumping is fairly straightforward. All we do is target the animal, get its tail to follow a target, and prescribe a backward somersault, and the animal will follow. Something like that with a killer whale, in fact, may only take 3 or 4 days to train.
How old is Nemo now?
He's about 7 years old.
And do you know how long he's expected to live?
There's no way of knowing. Killer whales have not been in captivity that long. And if they're like dolphins, they will probably live longer, or may live longer in captivity than they do in the wild.
It has been said that Nemo's living on borrowed time. What do you feel about that, Dave?
Well, it's not true. Killer whales haven't been in captivity that long, and all the figures for how long they live in captivity don't include the old killer whales.
During the summer, there was a move by conservationists to get Nemo reprogrammed and release him into the wild. How do you think he would survive?
I don't think it's possible to release him back into the wild for a variety of reasons. You'd have to overcome his awareness of a lot more space, and one of the biggest problems was how would you make him frightened of people? He likes people, as you've seen, and you cannot release a killer whale that likes people back into the wild because it would come up to a fishing boat, it would come close to boats, get hurt by propellers or even caught in fishing nets.
So what do you think of the benefits of having Nemo and Winnie at Windsor here?
Well, people basically enjoy it. Very large numbers come back again, and hopefully at the same time we can make them aware of these beautiful creatures and hopefully preserve them in the wild.
I hope so too. Dave, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Many of these whales have died in captivity. No killer has ever been born in captivity. They've all been captured in the wild, and most of them die within a relatively short time. The scientists are unraveling the mysteries of whale society, and they've been joined by workers funded from the showbiz end. SeaWorld, the biggest whale show operators in America, have their own research project off Alaska. They're studying the communication, age structure, and feeding habits of 100 whales. It has to be said that in the best show zoos, like the one at SeaWorld in California, the standard of management is very high. Maybe there is a glimmer of hope for the future of the man-whale relationship. The SeaWorld project will mean improved understanding of the species, more care in the taking of whales, better management, and more exciting shows for the public. The way ahead. But what it won't do is to help Nemo in his lonely pool at Clacton. His future is uncertain. He's for sale to the highest bidder, but the Department of the Environment will have to be convinced that he's going to a suitable home, whether it's another zoo or the open ocean, before they grant the necessary license. And that's the kind of decision it's not easy to make.
Performing killer whales have been called ambassadors for their species. And in the hearts and minds of many, this is where protecting the environment begins. Marine World Africa USA in Vallejo, California, has 2 killer whales, Yaka and Viga. In summer, they do up to 5 shows a day.
Come on, Yak. Come on.
Head trainer Sonny Allen has worked with Yaka for 20 years. No one has lived longer with or closer to a killer whale.
You a good girl? Huh? You a good girl? Yeah. Okay, where's Vicky? What'd you do? Shut Vicky up? Huh? Come here.
Killer whales are the top attraction in every oceanarium that has them. There are only about 45 in captivity,
What are you two going to do?
and each is worth around $1 million. So much depends on how whales and trainers get along.
I look at them as kids from around 7 to about 10 years old. They're always trying and seeing what they can get away with and what they can't get away with. So you have to be pretty much on your toes as a cetacean parent, if you will, and not so much a trainer. What? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Huh? What's this? What? Is that mine? Huh? Oh, that's your second favorite, ain't it?
Performing whales like Yaka are popular but controversial. They're both a joy and a headache for oceanarium directors like Mike Demetrius.
The public really didn't know very much about these animals. In fact, they were shooting them in Puget Sound. They were dive bombing them up in Iceland as little as 25 years ago. And now, because of what the oceanariums have done by educating people about what magnificent creatures they are, now it seems to have turned on us, and now people seem to think that they shouldn't be in captivity.
Are killer whales too smart and sensitive to be held captive? Do they suffer when separated from their pods and become demented in confinement? Although man exploits many other animals, captive killer whales rouse deep emotions. John Ford looks after the 3 killer whales at Vancouver Aquarium.
I think that it's very important for people to be exposed to the living animal, especially children. It makes an emotional bond that is unobtainable in other ways. And once a person has seen a killer whale, it may affect the way that they think about killer whales in the future, and other whales, and perhaps the environment generally.
Although his work has inspired sentiment against captivity, Mike Bigg believes it is acceptable.
It's really only in a captive situation that you can appreciate just how magnificent they are. We see them as much as anybody in the wild, but we're still only a fleeting glimpse of them. And when I go to an aquarium and I see them up close, I realize just how big and strong and beautiful they are.
Perhaps the most famous pair of captive killer whales were Orky and Corky, who lived for 20 years at Marineland in California. In 1977, Corky had a calf, the first killer whale to be conceived and born in captivity. There was great celebration. The future supply of captive whales seemed assured, and the successful birth was seen as proof that captive whales were healthy and happy.
Hey, here's to the next baby.
But the calf was brain damaged and soon died. Corky, the mother whale, had 4 more calves, but none of them survived. No one theory accounts for all the deaths, but Marineland's small tank was part of the problem. The baby couldn't be isolated with its mother, and Corky may not have been able to nurse properly in such close quarters. Each death at Marineland raised new doubts about the health of captive whales and their future in oceanariums. Then, in 1984, SeaWorld of Florida opened a huge new tank. Here there was room for up to half a dozen whales and for dramatic new shows. Today, almost all captive killer whales in the U.S. belong to SeaWorld. They are the mainstay of a business worth more than $1 billion. No other oceanarium does such spectacular stunts. And there have been problems. Several trainers have been injured in accidents. And for the first time on record, a whale died after a fight at SeaWorld San Diego. The social environment of the big tanks may be in part responsible. But here, too, life has been created. Beginning in 1985, there have been 5 successful killer whale births at SeaWorld. So, new pods of killer whales are being created. They will roam artificial oceans in Florida, in Texas, and in California. Like colonists in space, they will become new creatures in a strange new environment. As for the rest, far-flung and mysterious, they are only as safe as the air they breathe and the oceans they roam. In the long run, if we are to save the whales, we must save their world and our own.
But you don't need to live by the sea to watch whales. Today, they're a branch of show business, one of the top box office draws. There are heated debates about keeping killer whales in captivity. Some people say the whales are being exploited to provide entertainment. Many aquariums have discredited the business by failing to take proper care of the animals in their charge. Of the 127 wild killers which have been caught and taken into captivity since 1961, just 35 are alive today. As a result, public sympathy has moved towards banning shows like this altogether. But there is another side of the argument. Hundreds of thousands of people visit SeaWorld every year to watch killer whales put on their show. As trainers appear to risk their lives swimming with animals who could easily kill them, one question must be asked: how is it done? Training takes place between shows. It's not a matter of material rewards, nor is there any use of force. Whale trainers soon learn that whales are too independent to take bribes and too big to take orders. The whales are not rewarded with fish. They have all they want to eat all day. Their reward is the cheerful and sometimes strenuous interaction which they enjoy with their trainers. Some of the signals look obvious, but the response to them is very subtle and individual. If anyone else gestured like this to one of these whales, it would understand perfectly what was wanted and probably do nothing. The whale will respond actively only to a signal from someone it knows and trusts. Such communication between people and animals takes time to develop. Some animals respond to constant attention and interaction better than others. Dogs, for example, are much easier to train than cats. Killer whales, as the SeaWorld trainers have discovered, respond even better than dogs. They show every sign of enjoying human companionship and of appreciating the variety which the trainers exert themselves to provide. The performances which develop from the training sessions are almost all originally the whales' ideas. They show their trainers what they like to do, and then those ideas may find their way into the show. The impact on public opinion has been colossal. The days are gone when a killer whale trainer was regarded as someone on a par with a lion tamer, risking life and loss of limb by consorting with known man-eaters. What the whales think of it remains a mystery. Some people argue that they are tormented prisoners, slowly going insane in the echoing confines of their pool. Others reply that they are healthy and in apparently good spirits. The fact remains that more than half of all captive killer whales die after an average captivity of 3 years. Because the whales are so intelligent, there's always a danger they'll get bored. So the trainers see to it that no two shows are the same. This particular stunt was invented by the whale himself during an exercise session and was built into the show within a year, once the trainer had mastered it. All the stunts, or behaviors as they're called, come from natural behavior which has been exaggerated or extended beyond their normal duration. In the wild, looking around the surface is called spy hopping. For the show, the whale prolongs the spy hop into a protracted survey. The perfect synchronization of their movements adds to the spectacle, but perfect coordination is a way of life among whales, and it's easy to encourage these displays. Whale shows have changed people's feelings about killers from fear into admiration. This will benefit the species, but many newly converted whale lovers now argue that it's criminal to capture wild whales and confine them for life in a small pool. The solution to this argument is to set up a captive breeding program. But killer whales are notoriously difficult to breed in captivity. SeaWorld is one of the few aquariums to have achieved this aim. They credit their success to the good relationship between trainers and whales. When Candu, one of the SeaWorld females, became pregnant, the trainers spent 6 months teaching her to present her mammaries whenever she was touched in the right place, as she would be by the baby, then feeding, so that when her baby was born, she would allow it to feed, giving it every chance of survival. Captive whales had given birth before, but in each case the calf had died because the mother couldn't or wouldn't feed it. On September 26, 1985, after 15 months gestation, Candu gave birth in front of the cameras, and this unique piece of film flashed round the world. With another female in close attendance, just as in the wild, Candu was evidently relaxed and confident enough to feed baby Shamu from the start, as she had been taught. Before her first birthday, baby Shamu was taking part in the public display along with her parents. From a business point of view, baby Shamu is undoubtedly a monumental asset. She is the star of the show. But she's more important than that. She demonstrates that it is possible to breed and rear killer whales in captivity. As more and more countries bow to public opinion and refuse to allow killer whales to be captured in their waters, captive breeding will become essential if shows like this are to continue. The survival of wild whales depends on public opinion, and people respond more positively to pleas on behalf of an animal which they feel they know. The whales in the shows here and in other well-maintained aquariums have done much to change people's minds. Today, instead of viewing killers as man-eaters to be harpooned on sight, they are regarded as mysterious, lovable creatures in need of protection.
This is the story of Corky, a female killer whale whose real-life dilemma has been thrust into the spotlight because of a make-believe story.
Can you go in circles?
Free Willy tells the tale of a young boy who befriends a captive killer whale, then helps him escape to his family, who live in the ocean just outside a fictional theme park.
The greatest adventure of the summer.
Corky, meanwhile, is one of the orcas playing the role of Shamu at SeaWorld. Unlike other aquariums, SeaWorld has successfully bred orcas in captivity, as seen in this memorable footage of another killer whale from 1991. Corky has not been so lucky. Since her capture in 1969, she has lost 6 babies. Those advocating her release believe Corky's offspring would have lived in the wild, and that Corky herself would live longer if freed from captivity. Corky's caretakers at SeaWorld are opposed to her release.
I see an animal that's happy, and I see life in an oceanarium as not being bad, just different than life in the wild.
Jim McBain is Corky's doctor at SeaWorld. He says Corky has lived under the care of humans for too long to survive a return to the ocean.
It might be a great experiment, but as Corky's veterinarian and somebody that's known her for 6 years, I wouldn't really be interested in seeing her involved in the experiment.
Bottom line, you don't think Corky should be freed?
I think that it would be closer to a death sentence than freedom.
That's 827.
It's 827. Now tell me what that means.
827 is Corky's brother.
Really?
And Corky's mother. And Corky's 2 brothers and sister are right over there. You know, we thought, for example, that it would be possible to have Corky carry a camera underneath the water and in the middle of that group, getting this gorgeous imagery of what it is actually like to be a whale in that pod.
SeaWorld curator Jim Antrim says Spong's entire proposal lacks scientific validity, especially the plan to use Corky as a photographer.
If Corky hadn't seen any of her family members in 24 years and came swimming out with all this electronic gear on, do you think that would make them more inclined to accept her? I doubt it.
I think that they're afraid that if Corky goes back home, then people are going to realize these orca have families and they can go back to them. And they're going to start calling for more and more of the captives to be returned. And that, of course, would threaten SeaWorld and Anheuser-Busch's huge billion-dollar business.
The reason that SeaWorld won't release Corky is as a direct threat to her life. We're not willing to risk her life on an unfounded or speculative experiment. It has nothing to do with the money at all.
Gail Lawley was Corky's trainer for almost 5 years. She believes Spong's plan is dangerously misguided.
And fundamentally, it's a fairy tale. It's a wonderful, lovely story about an animal returning to her home in the wild, and it's a fairy tale. Everything that he has based on her ability to reacclimate to that situation is not based in reality.
The scientific study of these powerful creatures is still in its infancy. With so little to go on, says SeaWorld, they are not willing to risk Corky's life.
We looked at it from the standpoint of, was it the right thing for Corky, and definitely came to the conclusion it wasn't.
You know, my basic comment is, how do they know?
But then they say, how do you know?
We don't. It's an experiment, you know, and I think Corky deserves the chance, and let's find out.
But time is running out, says Spong, to make a decision. 28-year-old Corky is nearing the maximum age for killer whales in captivity. Every day the debate continues, he says, is a day lost for Corky and her family.
And what about Keiko, the star of Free Willy? He's an Icelandic killer whale, and the whereabouts of his family are unknown. So unlike the fictional Willy, Keiko cannot be returned to his home waters. Ironically, the orca that helped fuel this debate will live the rest of his life in captivity.
Our philosophy started 28 years ago when we started working with these animals, and really we weren't doing the best training.
You know, it wasn't like there was any school you could go to learn how to train marine mammals. There wasn't.
They didn't like us, they didn't really interact with us well, and we really had to change the way we worked with animals. We weren't in the water with them when we first worked with them, and then somebody said, hey, let's actually get in the water with these animals.
You know, the first time you jump in the water with a killer whale that weighs 6,000 pounds, it's pretty intimidating. You know, you get in the water with them, and they look a lot bigger right next to them in the water than they do when you're looking at them from the stadium, you know, when you're watching them from a show. They look pretty big then, but when you get right in the water with them, right up next to them, it's pretty intimidating. And if the animal picks up that you're afraid, they'll push on you or they'll open their mouth to see what you're going to do.
They decided things needed to change.
We had to really change the way we worked with these animals, the way we interacted with them. Our whole training process turned into positive reinforcement. What it simply means is just encouraging them all the time. There's really no wrong. It's making sure that they understand what is right and highly reinforcing them when they achieve it.
Ultimately, the relationships are based on trust. They're based on our positive reinforcement. They're based on fun. And really, the truth of the matter is, they're based on your heart, and they're based on you giving your love and your care to these animals on a daily basis.
These animals thrive in these nurturing environments where we're always hugging them and loving them and telling them that they're doing really well.
And we have to do this without the whales getting bored, because they could care less whether they're hitting the timing right. You know, we're the ones that have to worry about that. So we have to teach the whales to have fun while they're doing it. And then in the shows, they have to continue to have fun. And that's why the relationship has to be so strong between each individual trainer, because that animal has to want to do it. We can't make a killer whale do anything. If they don't want to do it, they don't do it.